Hello, besties and bosses. Let's see if I can pull this up in the group. How are you doing? I am doing so well, but I have to be very transparent with you. I've got my coffee here, and it's a little too hot, and I just totally burned my mouth. So I feel like I'm tripping over my words a little bit because my tongue is just feeling a little wild. Uh, TMI, but that's what's going on. We just like to keep it real over here. Let's see. Can I find myself in the group? If you are here, say hi. And if you're hopping on later in the replay, say hi as well. We are doing a giveaway today, I believe. Yes, we are. So if you missed last week, let me set us up here properly. Last week we did a mini masterclass on if your content isn't converting, if it's not bringing in leads, or if it's not bringing in the right leads and turning into clients. We just talked about what your strategy might be missing, not from a place of like there's some secret you're missing, but just to identify some of the really simple places you can make tweaks and adjustments to what you're already doing so that your strategy works better for you. So I will link after this live stream. It's basically the last live pinned at the top of the group. I will link that here because we basically ran out of time because I had a client call and I have more I want to share. So this is part 2 of that conversation. And we gave this away to someone last week. We will do the same giveaway this week because I think it's really congruent. If you're live, if you say hi, if you drop an emoji, if you let me know you're here, we are giving away to one person a copy of my bonus playbook, 6-figure content strategy, that has prompts that my clients and I both use to create content that stops the scroll and increases reach. And I've been testing this in my own content. It's gone up to over a 10,000% reach on some posts, but an average of over 2,000% reach on some of those posts. So we're giving away one copy of that. It's, I think, a very actionable giveaway. So comment, let me know you're here. I always like to know who's here and to be able to have those conversations with you. And as I'm going through this, because I do want to workshop this with you and I want this to be valuable for you, if you have questions, throw them at me and I will be mindful to pay attention to the comments. I know sometimes I go off on a little rant and forget to look at them, but I'll make sure I look at them so that I can respond to any of those. So to pick up and we'll just dive right in. Last week, what we were talking about, and I think what is, in case you don't watch last week's mini masterclass, and I think what's important to speak to, I think I've been sharing a couple of posts. I know I put a post yesterday, I think in the Facebook group, and I've shared some stuff on Instagram as well. There is a lot of conversation, and I know I have been adding to that conversation in terms of how saturated it is online, how much the industry has changed, how business has changed. I think a lot of people have been closing their businesses. I mean, that's not a story, that's just simply true. The economy has shifted, and so this is creating a lot of worry and also just simply a lot of content around, great, like what was working before isn't working anymore type of conversations. And so I want to normalize that all of that is actually true, and I don't want to worry monger. I think like while that's true, and this is one of the things I wrote in I think in the post we had yesterday, there's a post coming out later this week. I think, yes, it's saturated. And I both want to be evidence that while that is true, that doesn't have to mean there's a problem in your business or that your business has to suffer. I'm celebrating one of my best quarters in business, or Q1 was, ever in 8 years. Many of my clients have had some of their best months ever. We had someone to celebrate a first time 15K cash month. I have a client who secured over 500K in sales for the year, and they did that in January, I think, of this year. I had clients last year when people were closing their doors, scale their businesses, and many of my clients, I think all of my clients, sustained their revenue. So, or with, pretty close to their revenue. So I'm sharing that to say all of this noise is true, and I think it's helpful to be aware of that so we can have conversations around, yes, when it's more saturated, when there are more people online, that means there's more noise. And so while we could maybe get away with more surface level content in the past and marketing that wasn't as dialed in, it was more just about how could you put more content out there because there was less out there, right? That's what got you noticed in the past when everybody got in lockdown, right? Like that's what was really working during lockdown. But now that it's super saturated, just putting a bunch of the same out there or just adding to the noise isn't going to be what moves the needle forward for you, right? Things have just shifted, and we just want to shift as business owners with that. But that doesn't have to mean that there's a problem in your business or that you're going to go out of business or that your content isn't good. I think some of these conversations have had I've had clients coming to sessions and they're worried that their content isn't valuable or that they suck at creating content. None of that is, I really want you to hear that. None of that is true. And I, without even looking at your content, would guess your content is valuable. You're good at what you do. What it means is there might be some things to look at. Hey, am I including this in my content right now? Is there an opportunity for me to notice some things that have shifted that I can apply to my strategy because it is more saturated, it is louder. So to get noticed, to stand out, right? It's no longer about just putting a bunch of stuff out there, which wasn't wrong a couple of years ago. That is what worked. I think I shared this on another live stream, right? My content did look different a couple of years ago and we repurposed a ton. And I think even the way I create content has shifted a little bit in terms of what we're putting, the context of the content. But that was right in 2020. That I had an 88K sales month because I was doing that, and then I had 88K worth of sales and one-on-one coaching to deliver upon that required a different focus, right? Things have just shifted. So I really want you to hear that, where if you were doing something before, that doesn't mean that that was wrong. It simply means things are shifting and we want to take a look at, great, how do we get back to basics? And also just what are some of those needs that your strategy might have? And how is this an opportunity? This was picking this up, thought back up, one of the things I shared in, I think it was yesterday's post or the post that's going out this week. I really think when it's really saturated, I get kind of excited. This is spoiler alert, this is coming out an email I'm sending on Friday as well if you're on my list. But I think this is actually a time where we have such an opportunity as business owners to dial in, to tighten up our strategy, to refine our strategy, to get excited about looking at what's working, what's not working, and to implement or to change or to refine those things so that they can work better. And I think the business owners who are willing to do that, I really believe this is a time that you can thrive. And so anyway, we're going to talk about content today as my chair rolls down, but I really want you to hear that. If you tune out and you don't hear the rest of this conversation, please hear that part of it. I do not think this has to be a worry time, a doomsday scenario, and this talking about what your content strategy is missing, that's just the title, so we can say, hey, like maybe there's some things we can add in, not you're missing something or you're missing some secret. So hopefully that lands. And again, if you're live, say hi, let me know you're here, and we'll enter you to win our giveaway. So we talked about, I think, the 3 pieces your content might be missing last week, so catch that replay if you want to hear the rest. I'm just gonna pick up and dive right into the other 3 things. This is not every single thing your content might be missing, right? This is a mini masterclass, but these are 3 more elements I'm really noticing in that we've started including my content. And again, I've seen my content have, I shared this last January, my content had quite a drop in reach, and we've increased it on average. When I ran the numbers a while ago, it was on average like 2,200%, so to 2,200%. But some of our content has had an increase in reach of over 10,000%, which is mind-boggling to me. And so these are some of the things I've been thinking about, and these are also some of the things I'm supporting clients around. And it's making a really big difference in terms of not just reach with content, but reaching the right people. I've been talking about that so much. I just had a conversation with someone. We were talking about, like, traffic is no good if it's bringing you the wrong people, right? This isn't about, like, how do we just get in front of a gazillion people? I mean, viral reels are great, but I've had a client get a viral reel. That's not what blew up her business. All the client results I just shared and my results in business, none of us have had a viral reel with over 1 million in reach. That's great. We're not mad at that, but that doesn't do anything for your business if it's not attracting the right people for your offer. When I say right fit clients, when I say right fit leads, when I say the right people, I don't mean like there's a better or a worse person, but there is someone who's right for your offer. So what I've really noticed with these shifts is this is attracting more people who are qualified and then who land on your sales pages, who book calls with you, who go through your customer journey and really are right for your offer and want to work with you. I feel like I'm giving a lot of context and preface, but I want to make sure if you don't hear last week's conversation that lands for you. Laura, great to see you. Nice to see you here. Hi. Okay, so last week, I should probably have pulled up what we talked about last week, but today we're going to pick up on. So one of the biggest things I'm noticing here, and one of the things I'm seeing is missing from some of my clients' content, is what I call authority content, and I think a lot of people call that, but including in your content why you are an authority or an expert at what you do, and doing so in a way that is really mirroring you, walking your talk, and bringing in stories and examples that we talked a little bit about connection and relevance last week, and pain and problem awareness. Those were the 3 pieces we talked about last week. That's bringing in all of those elements, but helping people understand why you're an authority when you're speaking to a pain point someone has, or you're creating a problem awareness, or you're creating connection. And what I don't mean with this, and I think where I've been giving clients a lot of notes, and I think this is what did work a couple years ago. What I don't mean by this is simply sharing client wins or talking to monetary results or talking to your monetary results or talking to your shiny wins. I do think if you have those, and if you're a client of mine, you know I'm a very big pusher on how do we connect the dots and have you own your expertise and have you own what you bring to the table. I do think that is a part of what we're speaking with when we're talking about authority. Absolutely. But what I've really seen to be true is there's a lot of people, I'm like trying to think of how to say this in a way that isn't throwing people under the bus. There's frankly a lot of people who are flying in the online space, and there's a lot of mistrust in our online space. And I've had people hire me who have literally come through programs that I hate hearing this, but there are programs teaching people to lie about their results and to lie about what's true. And so because of this, and because humans are really smart, you and I are smart, but also consumers, your potential clients, we're all smart, and we've all gotten much smarter after having been burned or having been in the online space for so long. And so while it's great that it's more saturated because it's more normalized to buy online, there's more people online, there are a lot of people who have been burned, who are more wary, and a lot of people who are not who they say they are. So if in your content, in your marketing, you're simply owning metrics or client results, right? If we're simply owning that as that is the only way to demonstrate your authority, and when I say authority, I mean your expertise. What is unfortunately happening is I really think this is landing on deaf ears. Now, this does not mean don't share it. I think where this gets confused, and I think I was having a conversation about this with a client last week, is suddenly like people don't want to hear you talk about money. And if you don't help people with money, that might not be relevant for you, but maybe you work in the fitness world and it's like, well, then people don't want to hear about their weight, or I think we hear people don't want to hear about results, or they don't want to hear about those metrics. And then what happens, the client I was talking about with this is she just stopped talking about her metrics, her client's results, her client metrics. That is not at all what I mean here. So what we're not saying is suddenly don't talk about that. What I'm saying is we need to take it a layer deeper. And if we're only speaking to that, or if you're removing it from the story completely, put it back into the story. But if we're only speaking to, I'll use myself as an example, if all I'm telling you is that I'm a multi-6-figure coach and I've helped 16 clients make 6 figures, 28 clients make 10K months, 3 clients scale to $1 million, right? If I'm just sharing that, that's great. And hopefully you believe me, and hopefully I'm demonstrating other ways that I am who I say I am. But if that's all I'm ever speaking to and sharing, it's really surface level. And if you're someone who's brand new to me and there's 3 other people who are frankly lying about their results, right? There are plenty of people I've had to let clients go who are lying about their results, right? If everybody else is lying or kind of twisting the truth or saying something that's not fully true, and I'm saying that, you're not necessarily going to see that and be like, that's the reason I want to work with Kim. Hopefully that's clicking and connecting there. And so that's a little bit of the nuance here. And so when I'm looking at clients' content and their marketing, and we're taking a look at what might need to adjust or what are they missing, when I'm looking at, like, hey, we may need to bring in some more of your expertise, I'm thinking more along the lines of, great, how can we demonstrate with that? What is your thought leadership? What is your process? What is the way you've created those results? What has been a part of your journey? What has been the way you've supported clients to those results? How can we include more of the specifics, more of the details, more of your thought leadership to help teach people, to help show people what your expertise is? Because if we're just relying on the surface level, again, it's not that that's wrong. Please, please, please don't include that and don't hear that. I'm mindful because I'm going to go down a rabbit hole and off on a tangent here, but I'm going to because it's important. I find it hysterical because I've had people give me a hard time and say, like, you shouldn't be talking about money so much. Why do you talk about money so much? That doesn't work in the online space. And here are 2 things I know to be true. One, I talk about money because I think it's part of my job as a business coach who supports clients with making money. And I think it is out of integrity if I don't speak to something that I'm helping my clients make and get and normalize that conversation. But I also think it's really funny that the very people saying that are like, that's wrong, that's bad, are also now talking about that in their marketing, because if that's something you help people with, that's something we need to include in the conversation. So that's a little bit of a side tangent there, but I think we really want to be mindful of what we're listening to people saying, don't do this, you do this online, because it gets very black or white instead of there's always nuance, there's always context. And again, if you don't help people make money, you probably don't need to speak about money in your content, right? That's probably not a part of your authority or your expertise, but there probably is something else you bring to the table that we want to make sure you're owning in terms of those results. And we want to look at how can we really teach people what that means instead of staying on the surface level. So much of what we've been talking about last week and this week is going past surface level content, going past the generalisms and going past speaking to concepts of something and really diving in a couple layers deeper to help people understand what that means. So if you're either not speaking to what makes you an authority, what makes you an expert, what you bring to the table, your results, your client results, if you're not speaking to any of that, this is your opportunity to see like, oh, this is so great. Let me start bringing that into my content, because that's how we take content and start turning it into marketing, right? We're not just putting out content for the sake of putting out content. We want this to be a part of a holistic marketing strategy that's teaching people who you're right for, that's teaching people, hey, this is what I help people with, this is the problem I solve, this is the result I help people get, and that's taking them along a customer journey so they understand how they can work with you and why you're the best person suited to support them to get the results they want. Hopefully that's tracking there, but that's what I want you to be thinking about when we're thinking about what takes something from content to content marketing, to a content marketing strategy that attracts the right people, that brings in leads. Right, I can just show up and go live every week. I can go live every day of my life and never bring in a client, or I can think about how this live stream gets to be a part of my content marketing strategy, right? Those are two different things. And so this is a part of it. So if you're like, oh great, I haven't been owning any of my expertise, I haven't been bringing in any of my authority to my content, this is your opportunity to start bringing that in. If you're like, I have been doing that, but actually if I zone back, I'm just sort of like, and look, I did this 3 years ago, this worked. This is what I used to do. I'd write a piece of content. Let's say it was a piece about the 2 mindset blocks that are keeping you from selling on your sales call or navigating objections. That's a horrible title, but I'm making that up. Right? I might then weave in, as a multi-six-figure coach, this is something I've noticed, or as someone who's been in business for 8 years, or as someone who's supported countless clients at 6 and 7 figures, right? I would bring in some of that authority, but I would stop there. Now what I'm really seeing we need to do, again, is taking this a couple layers deeper and really helping people connect the dots to what that means, to how you're walking your talk, to how you are an authority or an expert. And part of this is being willing to own your story. I was just talking about this with someone, and one of the things we were talking about is how their marketing is technically correct. But what is missing is a little bit more of them like dropping the wall and showing, hey, here is me walking my talk. Here is how I do these things. Here is how I'm supporting clients with. Let me let you in behind these closed doors and help you see how I know I can help you do this because I'm doing this over here. Let me know if that's tracking for you. But again, this is taking it past the general surface level and thinking more about how can you speak to your experience of this? How can you share your process? How can you walk your talk or with clients, how can you share more of your client stories and not just the results itself? And I want to make sure we have time for everything else, but even with client stories, I was just, if this is helpful for everybody to hear, I was looking at another client, she was sharing, like case studies, client testimonials. And one of the things we really looked at and worked on is these were excellent client results, and she does excellent work with her clients. But the case study that she was using for her marketing was really speaking to general concepts of the work she did. And excuse me, I have the worst allergies, and I don't want to like sniffle and make you all listen to that, so I'm just gonna get my breath here. New York City in the spring. But one of the things we looked at and what we noticed is because what was happening is she was sharing these case studies and they just weren't bringing any traffic and they weren't converting. And one of the things we looked at when I was talking with her about is these are great and your work is great and these results are so shiny. But when I look at the way we're describing how you supported someone when we're going through this case study, all I'm hearing are concepts of what it means to be, this is a coach, what it means to be a coach. And we're really talking to concepts like mindset work or strategy or getting unblocked, or we worked through some fears, right? We were really speaking to general concepts of, instead of, and this is, I think, probably the thing I've been a broken record about on every live we've been talking about in terms of messaging and marketing, instead of really drilling into what did she specifically support this client with, what did this look like, how can we get past the words that are speaking to the concept of something and speak to the experience of that and what the work actually was. That difference makes a huge difference in how someone is going to connect with what you're sharing and how they're going to understand your expertise and what you do. If you think about, I would really start to pay attention to what has you stop your scroll and pay attention to a piece of content. My guess is when someone is speaking to general concepts and when they're like, hey, I'm a gazillionaire, like, let me teach you how to be a gazillionaire too, or all of my clients made $1 gazillion. You're like, yeah, that's great. Maybe it like catches your attention a little bit, but my guess, watch your behavior. My guess is what really has you pay attention is when they're then sharing something that feels really relevant to you, which is what we were talking about last week. And when they're getting really specific and you're like, oh, I see what this person is doing and they're so good at that, and I can see how that really helped someone, how that would really help me. I can put myself in that client's shoes. I can put myself into this piece of content and I can see how this person would then be able to help me get those results, right? It's sort of like the difference of being talked at versus talked with in a piece of content. And I think this is something that when we're trying to bring in authority and expertise, I think that is the gap we want to close or play with. Let me know if that's making sense, or if you want another example. I'm hoping that lands. If that does, I'm going to go on to the next piece here because I think this goes in tandem here. I think one of the ways you can show your authority and bring more authority is through how you're bringing in your thought leadership and how you are creating educational content. And I almost didn't include this. This is like last week when I was like, I didn't know if I wanted to talk about speaking to pain points and problem awareness, because apparently there's like a whole segment of the industry that's like, you shouldn't talk to pain points and you shouldn't create problem awareness. And you'll have to catch last week's live stream to hear my rant on that. As someone who is successfully running a business that has stayed fully booked for 5.5 years, we've made about $1.4 million in that time, or over that in that time. As someone who's supporting clients with their marketing all day, every day on thousands and thousands of calls, that's just not a thing in marketing, right? And also it's like educate. So the new thing is, and why I'm saying why I almost didn't want to bring in educational content here is educational content is not dead, but apparently that's the new thing to speak to. Like, educational content is dead, don't do educational content. And I think that's actually harming a lot of people's marketing strategies. I know I'm being a little sarcastic here, but this is not sarcastic. I think what's tough is we hear these sound bites from someone, and this isn't to throw shade on anyone. I don't know people who are sharing this, what is and is not true in their business, and maybe this is working for them, or maybe this is something they heard from someone else and it's getting distilled and it's missing some context. But I think we just want to be so mindful, all of us, right? When we hear little snippets of like, this is the thing that's working, this is dead, this isn't dead online, including with what I share, because there's only so much I can share in a 45-minute live stream, or, in a 2,200 character post on Instagram. And so you're often missing context. Educational content is not dead. Educational content is a great way to demonstrate your expertise, to demonstrate how you're an authority, to demonstrate your thought leadership, to demonstrate to someone and to build that trust with them as to why you are who you say you are, right? If we're saying there's a trust problem, right? Educational content is excellent for that. The way in which we're delivering educational content might have shifted from a couple of years ago, right? We might no longer be spewing a bunch of how-to content and a bunch of information at people because there's so much of that online. That is not a great way to differentiate yourself as the go-to person in your industry if you're just sharing more information and more educational how-to content that everybody is sharing, that is exactly the same as everybody else's, that doesn't have any thought leadership around it, or that is something I can just go into ChatGPT and ask ChatGPT, right? I think that is true, right? That kind of content is, for most businesses, probably not what's performing the best and bringing in really right fit clients and leads, right, and bringing those conversions. And even with that, it's not true for everyone, right? Depending on what your industry is and what your niche is and what you're selling. I have one client who comes to mind, and I won't say what she does because I think that might actually make it clear who it is for anyone who knows who some of my potential clients are. But based on her offer and her niche, we have found that some of the how-to content is exactly what her people want, because within her how-to content, she is able to differentiate, and her how-to, her process is different from a lot of people in her niche, but it's still educational content. So I actually think if you've heard that and you've stopped sharing educational content, there's a chance this is actually what your content might be missing and could use as an opportunity to help bring in those conversions. Because if we're not taking content a layer deeper, again, this is all like, how do we go past surface level, take it a layer deeper and build that know, like, and trust, so you have the connection, but also the trust with someone to you that you can actually do what you say you can do and help them get a result. And also that the person on the other side is in a place where they can show up to get a result from what you're sharing, right? Those are the three kinds of trust we need to build in our marketing strategy. If we're not sharing any kind of educational content, we're probably not building those three types of trust. You might build trust with you as a human. You might even build trust that you can help someone solve a problem, but we might not be building the trust that someone can show up for your program, your service, and get a result from it, right? And then that person is never gonna want to invest. If I read your content and like, that is great, that's super smart, but I can't get a result from that, I don't trust myself to show up for that, I don't trust myself that this is possible for me, I am never ever buying that. This is the silliest example ever, but anybody know the infrared like skincare masks? I think I'm gonna buy one. My best friend has convinced me I need one of these, but before my best friend convinced me I needed one of those, I wasn't convinced it would work for me. Right? I didn't have that trust that it would work for me. I trusted the science. I trusted the company. One of the companies that sells what I'm looking at, I actually have like an infrared ionic mat. It's like this cool thing you lie on it. It gives electrostatic waves to help your nervous system and healing. Anyway, I trust the company, right? I trust them. I have a connection with the company. I trust the science, right? I trust that it can work. But I wasn't fully trusting it could work for me at my age and all of that things until my friend helped educate me on why it would work for me. That's what we have to make sure with your content and your marketing strategy that we're doing. And so I'm going off on a little bit of a tangent here, but I think this is important to hear here. If we're not doing that, there is probably a gap that can be closed in your content marketing strategy, right? And we probably don't have a holistic strategy. You might have great content, but it might be great content that is getting you visible, or great content that is building a connection, but we're missing part of what's going to help create that conversion from your strategy. I'm really hoping this is landing. And so with this, again, educational content is not dead, but the way in which you educate your audience might change a little bit and might look different than it did a couple of years ago, because our industry has changed, because the landscape in which we all live and work and play has changed, because we have technology like AI, because we're not all in lockdown consuming things the same way, right? Even the way in which we deliver that education might change. And so I would really invite you to think about, when you're hearing these sorts of things, to be mindful of the black and white thinking, like, now I'm not going to do this, or now I'm going to only do this thing. I always, when I'm looking at clients when we're looking at their marketing strategy, I'm always looking at this holistically in terms of what are the different components we need. So we're getting you visible, we're bringing in the right people, we're nurturing those people, and we're able to then have something that converts them into clients, right? We have a customer journey we're bringing people through. And so we do need different types of content. We do need different things we're speaking to. Education is one of those pieces. I would just think less, how do I give people information? How am I regurgitating the thing I just heard, or the thing everybody is speaking to? That is probably dead, right? That's probably not the thing. It's not even that it's bad. It's just, if you're regurgitating information that everybody else is saying, that does not position you as an expert. That does not position you as an authority. That does not differentiate you in your market, that is where you just become a part of the noise because everybody's saying the same thing. This is the opportunity to say, great, what is my thought leadership? What's my take? What's my hot take in air quotes? What is the thing I've seen to be true? What is my process? What is my experience of this? How can I share part of my personal story? How can I educate through giving some examples of what my clients are doing? How can I walk people through having an aha or problem awareness, like we were talking about last week, remembering there's different ways to educate. What I'm doing here is educational content. And I don't know, I'm not the only business in the online space, but again, my business has stayed fully booked through all of these different seasons. So maybe that's some evidence for y'all. This is educational content right here, but this is this is not me saying here's how to write a post and like the 3 steps to write a post, as much as it's here are some concepts, here are some ideas, here's what I've seen to be true based on my experience from showing up to market every day for 8 years and studying marketing and studying my business and studying clients' businesses and studying the industry. Right? So it's a different kind of education. And so I would really think about that and look at where is that opportunity and see that educational content is a great place to bring in your authority, because it's a great place to say, what is the thing you're doing? What is the way you're doing this? Instead of, what did I hear someone else say is the right way to talk about this, right? That's where educational content doesn't work. This is another conversation I was having with a client, was giving them a very loving hard time. Where I was like looking at their content, I'm like, well, this is why this isn't landing. This is another one of those, like, it's technically correct, but none of this sounds like you. None of this sounds like anything you do. Like what this is here that we're putting out to the world that is educational and authority driven does not match what's over here when someone gets on a sales call with you, right? We need to have these two things match, but the shift that, like, trying to make this like a mirror here, but the shift there was for them to still educate and for them to show us an authority, but to educate not based on what they thought was technically correct or like what did so-and-so say was like the way to get this result, and instead to literally look at their own business and their own clients and to use that as where to bring the education from. I think what is also true when it comes to, hey Rachel, great to see you live as well. Nice to have you here. Let me know questions at all. And I know y'all don't care that I'm super nasally, but these allergies, I'm gonna like keep sniffling on our call here. So excuse me for that for a moment as well. But please, questions if this isn't clear, because I want to make sure this is also tangible for you. One of the things I think or two other things here I'd say with the educational content that I think this is a different way to think about it, instead of just like, here's information that I'm fire hosing people with. And not that you can't give information, but what I mean is, I'm just trying to think of myself as an example. So maybe a couple of years ago, we'll use mindset as an example, or even marketing as an example. Maybe what I would have done is like teach all of the intricacies and background of like why a marketing strategy works. Or if I was talking about mindset, maybe I like want to dive deep into like the subconscious mind and all the things that are happening. I probably still geek out about my content, because honestly, I think the people who want to work with me like that stuff as well. But that's because I know my people really well. Whereas now I might educate a little bit more around how it's showing up and how I've personally worked through that mindset piece, or how I've personally adjusted what's going on in marketing, or how I'm thinking about it as a successful business owner, or how I'm supporting a client through that mindset shift or with their marketing to get those results. So that's the difference, and maybe that might help this land a little bit more. And the big piece here, I think is want to like really have land for you all, is this type of educational content that has you really position yourself as the authority in your industry, is looking at what is true in your business, right? I keep saying walking your talk, and I don't mean that like no one here is in integrity, but really looking at what are you actually doing. That client example I gave you, wasn't, again, that their content wasn't great and technically correct. It just wasn't any of the shit they were actually doing or supporting clients with. That's the piece. If you can speak to what you're actually doing as opposed to what you've heard someone else say you're supposed to do, or what you heard in that last podcast, if you can instead look at your business, your clients, and speak to that, that is educational. That is the best educational content, in my opinion. I would so much rather hear from my coach what she's actually doing, right? Or I would so much rather, I'm in a mastermind, I work with a coach one-on-one, I'm in a mastermind with multi-6 and 7-figure business owners. I'd so much rather hear, when I'm on my mastermind, what they're actually doing when I ask a question versus what they heard someone on Instagram who claims to be an expert say was the right thing to do, right? That is the type of education, that's the type of feedback, that's the type of authority that I'm looking for, that's going to actually have me trust what they're saying and want to implement. So that's the difference we're talking about. The other thing with educational content, I think sometimes it's easy to forget this, when we keep talking about right fit leads, right fit clients, right? Bringing people through the door. And again, I'm going to keep saying this, right fit, the right clients, the right people does not mean there's better or worse people. It's just who is right for you, who is right for your offer, who's right for your program, your service. Everybody else can be a wonderful, amazing human being, but they just might not be right for the problem you solve and the results you deliver. I think what we forget is we can also educate people on things like your values and your beliefs and your way of doing things. And that is also a form of educational content that is maybe not how we traditionally think about content in terms of spewing a bunch of information or like, let me give you all the technical terms on like how the brain functions, right? These are the things that really help attract really great clients. And so this might also be a type of educational content that also builds authority and that also teaches people why you specifically are the best person that for them to hire or for them to buy a program from. And this is often what I see with clients when I'm doing an audit and we're working together long term. I'm like, hey, if you're getting a bunch of people coming through the door, you're like, everybody who's coming through the door is not right for my program. One of the things I'm often looking at with clients is, are we sharing what your values are? Are we sharing who you're right for? Are we educating people on your beliefs, on your approach and way of doing things? Are we speaking to who you're not for, right? Are we educating people on this in your content? Otherwise, that might be an opportunity for you to close. And so I think that is still educational. And I think we have to think like, how beneficial is that for someone on the other side for them to be able to filter themselves in or out? Let me know if that makes sense. I don't see any questions, so I'm going to go on here because I have one more piece here. Oh, I will say this. I said this at the beginning, but I think with the educational piece, I'm actually going to share one more thing because I think this might just help it land. I said this earlier, but just to speak to this, I think just remembering with educational, like that term, I almost wish I had a different term for it. Someone who's really good at like naming things, give me a different term for this, because I think we hear that and I think it makes us think we need to be like a teacher in grade school, like up at the chalkboard, right, where we're just lecturing. And I don't think of educational content as lecturing content. I think that is where the disconnect can be, right? So maybe there's even a reframe in terms of how we're thinking about this. This is not how do you lecture or speak at your audience. It's more, how do we help people understand, hey, this is where you're at. You're here, like X on the map. You are here. You want to go here. Here are some of the things that either you're not aware of, right? The problem awareness we talked about last week, you're not aware of is keeping you from getting here, or some of the things you need help with to get here. And this is the way I think about those steps. This is the way I help people with those steps. This is the way I traverse this landscape. This is the way I know, because I'm already up here and I've gone through this journey before, that looking back, like here are the things I would want to know, right? It's more like, how can I reach my hand out to you and show you that, like, even authority. I think authority is kind of a gross word in some ways, right? I think of authority like, I want to rebel against authority. So maybe even authority-driven content, we want to think of that more as like, how do you show you're confident you can help someone solve their problem and get their result? Maybe it's more confident-driven content, except for I think that also means something different. But I would think about it more as, how can we demonstrate through your content that you are who you say you are, and that you are so confident in saying, hey, I can help you figure out what's going on if you're not getting where you want to go. I can help you see where you're on at the map. I can help you diagnose the problem. I can help you figure out the steps to get there. And I feel so confident because I've done this before, and here's how I've done this before, and here's how I've walked so many people through this. I am so confident that we can get you from here to here. That's what authority content and educational content ideally is doing. And so maybe that will help give it a different frame for you. Hopefully that lands. Rachel says, love how you frame educational content as including values and belief. Oh, I'm so glad. Yeah, I'm glad you referenced that part. I really do think, because especially the personal development space, I don't know that every industry has had this challenge, but I think the personal development space, my coach, Lacey Sykes, give her a shout out. She talks so much about how there's a trust problem in our industry. I really do think that is true. And so educational content around your values, around your beliefs, around how you work, around your framework, and not just I got these results, I got these client results. Because when we have a trust problem in our industry, again, we then think either someone isn't saying who they say they are, they're not walking their talk, or I think it's very easy if you don't trust yourself to get results to think, well, that's great for so-and-so to say, right? That's great for Kim to say she got those results, but could she help me? Or that's great for those, like, who hasn't done this? Who hasn't pulled up someone's sales page and you see the shiny testimonial result? And you're like, fine, but they had 1,000 people go through their program. Or in my case, I have 20 to 25 clients, so we actually have very high norms for statistics. But who doesn't see the result? And you're like, either like they paid someone to say that, or like that's not true, or they just got their friend to write the testimonial, or like that's the one person who got them. Like I could never do that, right? So if we're not speaking to some of these other like things like values, beliefs, how we actually help people, I think we just miss that opportunity to help someone see how we can help them. Kate says so true about the trust piece. Yeah, it's I want to be mindful because I'll go down a rabbit hole here or get on a soapbox, as you know, Kate, because I like to do that. It is unfortunate, and I'm grateful for the trust piece, and here's why. We had issues I love the coaching industry. Kate, you know that because you've been to enough of my live streams, you've heard enough of my content. I love this industry. This industry has changed my life. I believe in it. I believe in coaching. It's why I only offer one-on-one. I think coaches are amazing humans, right? And like any unregulated industry, anything that is unregulated has issues, and our industry has had a lot of issues, and it has had a lot of, I mean, like, look at the Netflix shows talking about the cults and like the weird shit that's gone down. And so I'm not grateful we have a trust issue, but I'm grateful some things have come to the surface because it's having us talk about it. And I think for 95% of the coaches or people in the personal development space, I think are who they say they are in integrity, want to do great work, want to help people. And so I think it's helping all of us to really, I was just talking, I had a client in town this weekend that I got to spend the day with. It was so happy making, but we were talking about this and how I think it's having so many more of us want to be a voice for the industry. Look at how we can improve the industry. Look at how we can solve some of these problems. Look at how we can improve and raise the standard for the industry. So in that way, I think it's great. And I think it's also having people not get themselves into shitty situations with investments that burn them. So a little bit of a sidebar there, but it's unfortunate, but I do think there's some silver linings to it. I do want to talk on the last piece in terms of what your content strategy might be missing. And not like you're missing some secret, but just, hey, pay attention to this. If your content isn't doing what you want it to do, if your strategy is not doing what it wants to do, here's just another piece to pay attention to. This is the most basic bitch thing I'm going to share with you. And I said this on an Instagram story yesterday. I hope you leave my content thinking, this is so simple. This is stuff I knew. This is stuff I just needed to have framed a different way. This is stuff where like I just needed a reminder. I really hope you see like this does not have to be complicated shit. Sometimes we're just forgetting, or we're not doing something because someone has said something doesn't work anymore, and there's nuance we're missing. And this is a specific cell of your solution in your content, and or a specific and clear call to action to the next step in your customer journey. Again, I know this is so obvious, and this is often when I'm looking at clients' overall strategy or a single piece of content, what is missing or what needs refining. And I think there's two pieces here. The first one is, remember, you are always selling. So when we're looking at your marketing strategy, ideally, my goal, if you're a client of mine, we're creating your marketing strategy, we're looking at your messaging, we're looking at your positioning, we're creating that customer journey. My goal is that by the time someone gets on a sales call with you, by the time someone lands on your sales page, they already know they want to hire you. They already know who you are, right? They're just there for confirmation of the details so that your sales page or your sales call doesn't have to do the heavy lifting. Just had a client hire me. This is not to pat myself on the back. This is just to demonstrate this. This literally happened today. And they said, oh no, like I've been waiting for 2 days for our call for you to tell me how I can work with you, but I already know because I've been looking at your content and I've consumed it and I read your sales page. Like I already know I want to work with you basically. And so we just had to go through the details of, is this a fit? Like confirm some things, go over some questions, go over some details. That is the goal for your messaging, your marketing strategy. Now, of course, depending on where you're at in business, and I've shared this before too, it's not like when I started my business, everybody was on the phone with me, knew that because maybe I didn't have as much marketing in place, right? Like this is something that happens over time. I have 8 years of content to also nurture people. So this isn't to make anyone wrong if that doesn't happen. Of course, people find my stuff and book a call, and that doesn't happen on every single consultation I have. But this is the goal of your content marketing strategy, which means we want to remember that each piece of content you have it's a little mini vehicle that's doing the heavy sales lifting for you, right? Your sales process does not start on your sales page. Your sales process does not start on your sales call. Your sales process starts far, far, far before, from the point when someone first lands and gets visible in your world, and we make sure we're getting the right people through your customer journey. And so we want to remember, this means we want to be clear on what your offer is and that we're selling it, and we're thinking about how to sell it with every piece of content. And we're doing two things then. We're doing what I've done through this whole live stream, right? I very unapologetically have talked about my work, have talked about my process, have talked about my client results, right? I've been selling. I've been doing all of the different things we're talking about, but I'm also letting you know, like, hey, these are things I can help you with. Hey, I'm really good at it, right? So we want to make sure we're owning that through your content in different ways. And we also want to look at what is the offer you're currently selling. And this is a conversation I have with clients, so especially new clients. A lot of times, part of the challenge with your content marketing strategy, what's missing is we don't know the goal of your content, right? I just had a call with a long-term client yesterday, and she was stuck on content and she was procrastinating. And it turned out the reason was she didn't know her current sales goal. And because she didn't know her current sales goal, she didn't know how to reverse engineer and what to create content around so that it was a vehicle to sell into that sales goal. Let me know if this is tracking. So yes, sell throughout, right? Like, I'm selling my expertise, I'm selling why I'm great at what I do, but I also need to know what is my current sales goal so that every piece of content is a vehicle that's taking people strategically on that journey to what it is I'm offering. So if I sold coffee, this is like the worst example ever, right? But if I sold coffee and I knew that I had a special coming up on my coffee, like, I would want to make sure that I'll reverse engineer to, let's say I had a conversion event on, like, I'm going to sell you a special coffee maker that, this is the worst example, but this is just like what was in front of my face, that has like a grinding mechanism, and that I believe that ground coffee is far better than buying coffee in a bag, and like, you need to have my special grounding mechanism tool because like it's what makes the far superior coffee. I do actually think that's true, right? I would want to reverse engineer that and then think about, how am I strategically creating content that's going to lead up to me offering this special grinder, right? So I'm not just going to talk about coffee or beverages. I'm going to want to start talking about, like, oh, well, like, here's a reason, like, just buying coffee out of the bag sucks. And I'm going to want to talk about, like, here are some reasons if you've bought a grinder for your coffee before, it didn't work. Or here are some, like, I would want to start doing some of that. This is educational content, right? But it is really tied into what it is I'm selling. So that's the first piece there. We just want to know, what is your sales goal, right? If your sales goal is to sell an opt-in to your email list, that's a sales goal. But then we want to reverse engineer that. What is that opt-in? What is that sales goal? How are we creating content that is educating people, teaching people why they want that, overcoming their objections, right? Overcoming objections in content, that's a form of educational content in my opinion, right? Maybe that's not traditional informational content like we think about, but that is a form of educational content. How are we being smart and reverse engineering that so all of your content is strategically designed to bring them to that goal? So by the time you make that pitch and offer, right, people already know why they want it. That's my timer to say that I have to wrap up our live stream because I have a coaching call after this. So that's the first piece. Let me know if that lands for y'all. And then the other one here is a specific call to action. And a couple things come up for me. I find sometimes we have no call to action. Look, every piece of content doesn't have to have a call to action, but if you are clear on what your current marketing and sales goal are, it's really going to support you into figuring out what calls to action you want to have. And if you don't have a call to action, that if you're like, why is my content not converting? Sometimes it's simply because we're not telling people really clearly and directly the next step we want them to take. And this is then where looking at your holistic marketing strategy, not to make this overcomplicated, but I think that's also then how we start to know what calls to action to give to a certain piece of content. Are we speaking to a cold audience? Are we speaking to a warm audience? Right? I'm probably going to give a different call to action to cold traffic than to warm traffic. Y'all are my warm people, right? You're my people in this group where I'm like, you're the people I want to work with. I'm probably going to give you a call to action that looks like hey, if you want support with your marketing strategy, if you want to create a holistic marketing strategy, if you want to get clear on the messaging, the positioning, and how to create that customer journey, and how to know what calls to action to put in place and how to have that convert to book out your business, I offer a new marketing strategy intensive, your marketing multiply, right? You should take me up on that. This is actually a true, like, and real pitch, and I will drop a consult link for that, right? I'm going to speak to that. But if you're, let's say I'm on Instagram and I just posted a reel that is going mostly to new people, and that's a mechanism for me to bring in new traffic, I'm probably not going to give that offer to brand new traffic that just landed into my world, right? I'm probably going to have a call to action that's something like, leave a comment below, save this post for later, share it with a friend, let me know what you think. Maybe I'll invite them into a masterclass or into a freebie, but even that's going to be a pretty big next step. So with this, what I want you to think about is, what is your sales goal, right? Are you clear on your sales and marketing goal? Are you selling throughout content? Are you creating content strategically that leads to what your current sales goal is? And do you have calls to actions? And I don't want to make this overcomplicated, but I just want you to see how you can think about this strategically and think about, are we putting calls to actions that are really clear and specific and direct and telling people what you want them to do? It is amazing how if you tell people what to do, they will do that, right? If they're the right fit. But are we also thinking about, is this a strategic call to action that takes people on the next step in your customer journey? And if you're not clear on that customer journey, you should hire me. And just because I'm really good at this and I can help you with this. But if you are clear in your customer journey and you're not getting the conversions you want, I would check there, because sometimes it's just that simple, and that your content's working, your strategy is great. We're just asking people to marry you when they've just landed in your world, or we're speaking to people who are ready for you to put a ring on it, and we're still asking them to go on the first date, right? You have to think about, for those of you who are married, or who want to get married, who want a relationship like that. If you've been dating for someone a long time, you don't just want them to keep taking you on surface level dates, right? You're like, are we going to make this, like, can we make this thing legit? And so either way, we just want to think about what's the appropriate next step in the journey that we're inviting people into. And then with that, this is what I'm always looking at when I'm reviewing clients' content, is just, are we being clear and specific in that and helping people understand why they want to take that next step depending on what that is. So Kate says, makes perfect sense. Rachel says, reverse engineer your content. Yes, she says, says Rachel. Sorry, I missed those before. Yeah, and I think let it be, I know there's a lot of nuance here, but I'm hoping, y'all have to let me know, I'm hoping you see it also gets to be that simple. And I was just sharing this with a client earlier. I think sometimes when marketing isn't working, when we're not getting leads through the door, when we're not getting enough calls booking, and we're not getting enough people buying, we're not getting people engaging or reviewing our content, right? I think it's really frustrating to think like, well, this doesn't work for me. There's something wrong, or my marketing doesn't work, or my content sucks. I would really, really wager a bet for anyone who's actually watching this live stream, your content doesn't suck, your offer doesn't suck, right? And usually it's taking a look holistically at what's going on with your strategy. And usually there's something very, like, marketing makes sense, results make sense, marketing strategies work. It usually just means there's either something missing, not that you're missing something, but it's just something that we need to think about, like a call to action, right? That needs to be more specific, or something that we just need to adjust or tweak that makes a huge difference. It is wild to me how really small shifts make really big differences. And so I hope this is valuable for y'all. I hope this is helping you see that really so often we think we have to reinvent the wheel or like pick a new platform, right? If you're on Instagram, you need to be on Facebook. If you're on Facebook, you need to be on LinkedIn, or whatever the noise is in our brains. I think that it's so common to do that, as opposed to usually most people are like 85% of the way there. And it's like, we're just shifting some of these small pieces. We just need to get clear on some language shifts. We just need to make some of these small micro adjustments that can make a massive, massive difference in terms of your results. So hope that's valuable for you. Thank you all for hanging out with me. This will conclude, for real, what your content strategy is missing if it's not bringing in the leads and clients consistently that you want. If you watch this on the replay and you have a question, drop it for me in the comments. If any of you have a question for me, let me know. Or if there's something different you want me to go in more depth on a future live stream, let me know. And then again, we have opened up some of my Your Marketing Multiplied Strategy Intensive. That is my new week-long strategy intensive. They are so fun. They are so great. I know I'm like selling myself here, but it's just true. It has been so fun to me and so cool to see how in 1 week we can map out your messaging, your positioning, and update and create a holistic marketing strategy. So even if I've had people hiring me who are making 10K, 12K, 15K months. So like, they have a great message, they have a great strategy, but what we're doing is finding where are the gaps in their strategy, what can we do to make this a holistic strategy so it's working like a more well-oiled machine, and it's really working in 2024? And then what are those micro shifts to the positioning to really have it speak to the right person, to bring more of those right people and to teach them why to hire you before they land on your sales page. So if you're interested in that, I will drop a link. We've opened up some of my Fridays that I generally take off to be able to serve more of you. And then I do have a one-on-one coaching spot for my 6-month container opening up in May and June. So if you're interested in that, I will drop a free consultation link for that as well. Thank you for being here. I love you all so much. You're all doing amazing. I see your content in this group every week, so remember that as well. And yeah, I will be back next week with another topic for you. Bye, y'all.